Welcome to Invest Week, a digital series brought to you by the Australian Investment Council. In today's episode, Yasser is joined by Dr Kath Giles, CEO of OncoRes Medical. Kath has a unique background as a frontline medical practitioner who then made a move into a new phase of her career by taking on a role in the investment sector. She talks to Yasser about how that experience helped her see a more comprehensive picture of the role of investors and the role of business leadership in delivering outcomes for all stakeholders, and what she sees as the most important elements and features of the relationship between VC investor and the portfolio company.
Well, welcome back to the Australian Investment Council's Invest Week series. And in this part of the series, we're very fortunate today to be talking to Dr Kath Giles, who's the CEO and Managing Director of WA-based medtech company, OncoRes Medical. One of the things I'm really excited about in this discussion with Dr Kath Giles today is the opportunity to speak with Kath, I guess wearing two hats, because on the one hand, Kath is the CEO and Managing Director of OncoRes Medical, based over in Western Australia, but she's also an investment professional with Brandon Capital Partners, one of Australia's largest venture investors here in the Australian market. Dr Kath Giles, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us as part of this Invest Week series.
Hi Yasser, thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you today.
So tell me a little bit about OncoRes Medical. It's a medtech business, but tell us, for those outside the medical profession who don't live and breathe medtech and life sciences every day, what is the business about? What is the technology that underpins this business, Kath?
So OncoRes Medical has a technology that's offering surgeons supercharged touch. Touch is such an incredibly important sense for surgeons, and it aids decision making across surgical specialties. But as we all know, touch is very variable. So what our technology does is it offers quantified touch at a micro scale for surgeons. And initially we're focusing that technology on breast cancer. So 30% of Australian women who are lucky enough to just have a lumpectomy as opposed to a mastectomy, which is full removal of the breast. In 30% of these women, they will have to go back for further surgery, as a week after the operation, the pathologist discovers that there are cancer cells too close to the edge of the excised lump, which means that we infer that there are cancer cells remaining inside the patient. And it is absolutely incredible to think that in an age where technology rules our lives, surgeons are still relying on their senses of sight and touch to determine that they've removed all of the tumour. And so what our device does is our device will be able to be, it's an imaging probe that will be able to be used by surgeons inside the surgical cavity during the first surgery to determine whether or not they've managed to remove all of the tumour, identifying any tumour that has been missed so they can ensure that they've removed all of it the first time. These extra surgeries or re-excision surgeries are a significant problem globally. And we know that the cost of just these extra surgeries is over $1 billion in the US and some major European countries every year. And that's not to mention the emotional, financial and physical impact that these re-excision surgeries have on patients and families. Every time we take a patient back to surgery, there's increased risk that they'll get an infection or another complication of the surgery. And 37% of these women will choose to have a mastectomy after that first surgery because they don't have the confidence that all of the tumour will be removed.
And so, Kath, as you point out, you come from a medical practitioner background. You've been at the coalface, as it were, in the operating theatres and at the front line of medical service delivery. You're in a role now where you're managing a business. You're overseeing a team of researchers, of practitioners who are bringing this discovery to life and finding a way to bring this product not just to market here in a domestic context, but also globally. How have you found that transition, and how do you easily straddle that different role that I guess you've come from in a medical arena through to an investment-facing role and now into a leadership and management role?
Great question. So when I left full-time clinical practice, that was a very difficult decision, as I going into medicine, I really wanted to have a career where I could make a significant difference and help others. And I always questioned when I left medicine how I was going to be able to make that significant difference in a career that wasn't medicine. To have been able to have the opportunity to transition into what I do today, we have, as a company, and as Brandon as well, we have such an incredible opportunity to truly impact patient care in a way that doesn't just affect patients one-on-one, but affects millions of patients globally. So it's an incredible opportunity to be able to have that kind of career, and it's a very fulfilling one. I think also, to answer a sort of separate part of your question, having been a clinician and still only very recently I've stopped working alongside surgeons in theatre, I really have seen the clinical, I understand, I've been in the clinic, I've seen the problem, I understand how difficult it is. I've seen the devastation cancer causes in particular, and so it's fantastic to be able to really take that understanding and then apply the investment and business skills to really be able to drive change.
So Kath, tell me a little bit about the growth journey for OncoRes Medical. I know that bringing medtech businesses and life sciences businesses to market is an extremely long process in many cases, many years in fact, unlike digital tech businesses, which can sometimes evolve and expand into markets very rapidly. But it's quite different for medtech, isn't it? Because you have a number of processes to go through, many of which revolve around clinical practice, clinical trials, and then of course, regulatory approvals. Where is OncoRes Medical on that journey, and what are the sources of funding that OncoRes has brought into the business over the last few years?
So I first saw the technology back in 2013. And I guess it's important to mention here that Brandon Capital is a really early stage investor. We go look for cool science on the lab bench that we see can have a significant impact in patient care. So when I first saw this technology back in 2013, it was absolute love at first sight for me. I could see how this was just what the surgeons were looking for. It was more information at their fingertips to enable them to make better decisions and therefore create better patient outcomes. So I worked with the team for 3 years to develop the business case and then the investment case around this technology. And Brandon invested a Series A round of $6 million back in 2016. And we had 3 really key questions that we wanted covered off in that round of investment, which were, can this technology see cancer and how accurate is it? Can we put it into a handheld probe? And what is the path that this needs to take to get to market? Because as you just mentioned, Yasser, for medical technologies to get onto the market, we have to really meet the needs of 3 different players or stakeholders in the market. We need to satisfy the regulator, so the FDA in the US or the TGA in Australia. We have to satisfy the insurers, so to ensure that our technology will get paid for or reimbursed. And we have to satisfy the surgeons that our technology will do what it says on the box every time. So it is a long process. I'm very pleased to let you know that we met those outcomes for the Series A investment round. So we've shown that our technology with human readers is around 96% accurate at detecting cancer, which was in a benchtop study, all done at Fiona Stanley Hospital in Perth. So we were incredibly excited about that. We have put that technology into a handheld probe and it produces similar images to the benchtop system. And then now we've scanned over 20 patients inside the surgical cavity with that handheld probe. So we have also been really fortunate to be supported by the Australian federal government, and we've had 2 large grants from the federal government, and obviously the R&D tax incentive has made a significant difference for us as well. At the beginning of 2020, we took on, actually in the midst of COVID madness, we took on a convertible note from Brandon to meet a key value accretive milestone this year and position us to raise around an Australian 25 million Series B round in 2021. And so the stage of the business now is that now that we've done proof of concept in the surgical cavity, we now have started formal product development, and then we'll go into our formal clinical trials program as governed by the FDA, the regulators and the clinicians, to ensure we have that evidence that we require to meet their needs. And we've probably got around a 5-year path to market in the US currently.
That's fantastic, Kath, and you and the team should be really excited and humbled by the progress that you've made in the space of just a few years. And it sounds like the journey towards domestic and global market growth is within reach now. Fantastic milestone for you and the team. Well done.
Thanks, Yasser.
So this Invest Week series is really all about explaining to our audience the role of private capital investment in the real economy, in the context of real businesses out there across almost every sector of our national domestic economy here in Australia. For you, the journey into OncoRes Medical, as we touched on a little bit earlier, has been somewhat unique and different, isn't it? It's not often the case that investment managers and leaders within the private capital firms, in this case Brandon Capital, actually end up moving into the portfolio company, into OncoRes Medical in your case. But it is a unique experience and a fantastically unique opportunity as well. But tell me a little bit about the role of an investment professional in this case. When you were excited by the opportunity to back through Brandon Capital, OncoRes Medical, and the work that was being done by the team at that point, what are some of the issues that resonated most for you, and what was the paradigm through which you were looking at OncoRes Medical through the investment lens?
Yeah, I guess really we're looking, as I said, for technologies that, early stage technologies that we can see can make an incredible impact on patient care. So for me, in my role at Brandon, I set up 2 companies in Western Australia. So one is OncoRes and the other is Respirion, which is developing a novel antibiotic for cystic fibrosis. And I guess personally, I've worked both a lot in surgery and also on the wards on a cystic fibrosis team. So when I saw those projects initially, I had direct experience of the problems that we were looking for. And I think that's sort of one of the really key things that we look for initially. We really want to gain an understanding of what the clinical need is. What is this problem that they're trying to solve? And then making sure that we go out and talk to as many clinicians as possible and other stakeholders, identifying other stakeholders in that problem and talking to them as well to understand, one, that they actually recognise that this is an issue, but then also if we had a technology that does what this technology hopes to do, would this be something they'd be interested in? And I'm sort of really, and I think that sort of was a lot of the first 3 years that I worked on this technology before we made the investment, was really going and getting an in-depth understanding of the clinical need, of the market. The OncoRes technology, whilst we're focusing on breast first, it is very much a platform technology. So we've had significant interest from other cancer surgeons. And then also in minimally invasive or keyhole surgery and robotic surgery, where the surgeon's sense of touch is completely removed. So in all of these, we believe that OncoRes obviously has much broader applicability than just in breast cancer. And so that was also a lot of the investigation that I did in the first place. Yeah. So what made me really excited was, like I said, I could just see how this was what surgeons were looking for. Surgeons like to be in control. They want things in real time. They don't want to have to wait for another doctor, a pathologist or a radiologist to come in and do some imaging or have a look at the specimen. So this was just what they were looking for.
So we often talk about the role of private capital investors, Kath, as being a very hands-on role, providing much more than just the capital to support the growth of a business through its varying stages of expansion domestically and globally. For you, what do you see as the virtues, the benefits of having a venture capital investor, a private capital firm along the lines of Brandon Capital, as we've mentioned, coming to the table to support the growth and expansion of OncoRes Medical. What is the real value add in your eyes that a private capital investor brings to a business?
Yeah, so aside from the money, it's very much having a domain expert who's got the networks and also the experience in the space so that they can guide us along the journey, the networks in the space so they can introduce us to the people we'll need to be introduced to. And that's from other investors to people who aid us with our market access to people who will aid us with the development of the technology. Having that pool of experience and the networks that go along with us, it have been crucial to us. And I'll just give you a little example with OncoRes. So initially, obviously, when I was doing the first it's sort of more due diligence on the technology itself and the market, being able to access other surgeons to talk to them about how they saw this technology, to be able to also go into Brandon's network and then access some of the big companies who are our potential acquirers. Because before we make any investment, we really investigate how we're going to exit the investment at the end as well. So it's really important to go talk to potential acquirers to understand their interest in the space and understand the stage of development that we'll have to get the technology to for them to become interested in acquiring it. So those are both important. But then also, once I became CEO, that the experience and networks of Brandon have been so incredibly important to OncoRes as it's in every stage of the journey. So a great example is that we've got Leighton Reed, who's our venture partner over in Palo Alto. And in February 2018, we had an initial trip to the US, and Leighton started introducing us to other venture investors and a number of other people in the US market. The US is the first market for OncoRes, and so those initial introductions from Leighton led us to enter the MedTech Innovator Program, which is a global program based out of LA. It's also run by an investor turned, I don't know what you'd call him now, but Paul Grand's the CEO of the MedTech Innovator, and he switched to that from an investment background initially. And we were the first Australian company to ever be selected into that accelerator program. OncoRes won the Value Award for the company in that year's cohort that had the potential for the greatest impact on patient care, and we were runner-up for the whole program. Through that program, we then got embraced by the global medtech community, and we've gained a number of very key advisors who've completely reshaped the business and the way that we are approaching our market access in particular. And we've gained a huge number of supporters globally who we can now sort of so the network leverages on itself. And that has been and continues to be incredibly important for Brandon, because I think one of the key things with technology development is you need to have a great globally unique technology to even get to the starting line, but it's going to be the team that helps you run the race. And so through Brandon, we've been able to leverage on their networks to create an incredible team to help us get there.
Sounds like the role of Brandon Capital in this case, much like private capital firms all over our industry, Kath, has been clearly much more than capital, and indeed very important to the growth story behind the business itself. And as you've quite rightly pointed out, realising opportunities, capitalising on the momentum that underpins the business through that access to domestic and global strategic networks is clearly something that's had a very significant positive impact on OncoRes Medical so far. And it sounds like your outlook for the years ahead of you suggests that there's every reason to be optimistic that that strategic advice, that support, that access to global connectivity and networks will help to unlock those bigger expansion opportunities for the business in the years ahead.
Yeah, so there is no way we would be where we are today without private capital, whether it was Brandon or another investment fund. The technology, to take technologies out of the lab, there's only so far that the government initiatives can go. And at some stage, very early in the development, these technologies need to go into a more commercial vehicle to enable further development and then ultimately commercial success, and for us to be able to impact the maximum number of patients possible. So part of the reason, there are many reasons for that. I mean, in particular, for us, for OncoRes' technology to have maximum global potential and provide benefit to the most patients possible, we'll need to partner this with one of the major medical device companies globally. And to be able to do that, we'll have to have developed a very strong and robust intellectual property portfolio. And as we discussed before, the product under particular medical device regulations, and then also the clinical evidence portfolio. And that's a long journey that takes a lot of money. So it probably is, in total, somewhere between $70 and $100 million to market, which will be from beginning to end, which will have been a combination of government grants, private capital, and ultimately, hopefully, strategic investment from the strategic investors as well.
So, Kath, any discussion with a medtech business in contemporary times, of course, has to explore the impact of COVID-19 on the business. So for OncoRes Medical, what has the pandemic meant for the business? Has it slowed you down? Has it created opportunities even for OncoRes Medical that weren't there before?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. That for us, we've been, well, for a start, I should say we've been incredibly fortunate because we're based in Western Australia. And so to date, we have, with the border closures and things, the community has been well protected from the brunt of the COVID pandemic. For OncoRes in particular, this has offered us an incredible number of opportunities. For a start, we have far more access to people and content than we ever did before. So previously, you know, we'd have a 30-hour commute to the US or Europe to be able to engage with potential investors and strategic partners, whereas people now, seeing as they're going to have to use Zoom or some other medium to communicate with people in their backyard, they're far more open to using Zoom to communicate with people on the other side of the world. So I guess that's sort of a starting point. In terms of other more impacts closer to home, it actually was, so we took on the convertible note from Brandon on March the 25th. So it was very much in the middle of the crazy lockdown. And I had identified 3 key staff that I wanted to employ. So we managed to employ them starting in April, and all of those staff have young children. And so whilst I wouldn't, in normal times, I wouldn't have been able to afford to employ them because I couldn't afford to employ all of them full time at that point, I was able to bring them all on part-time, which actually worked really well because they all have partners who work as well. So that we've had 7 staff join us since March. And so that's also been an incredible opportunity for us. Also, in terms of with the border closures and the low incidence of COVID in WA, we've been able to continue running our clinical trial, which is incredibly important. And I know from speaking to investors in the US that this has been one of the key concerns for them and their investment portfolios, and also has certainly impacted the number of new investments that they're doing because of the disarray of clinical trials currently. And so, like I said, that's just a couple of the opportunities that have arisen out of the pandemic for us, not to mention the fact that people are now certainly a lot more interested in medical research, medical innovation, and the impact that we can have on health, the positive impact that we can have on health in the community.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right, Kath. Clearly, medical research is much more today a barbecue conversation than it ever has been in years past, isn't it? And I think that's a good thing for life sciences, for medical research, for our researchers as well, to feel the weight of community support behind the very important work that they do on a day-to-day basis that in normal times, let's say, sometimes is missed or goes unnoticed. But when you look into your crystal ball, Kath, on the back of those fundamental shifts that we can observe, the fact that medical research now is a much more prominent conversation across our community than it ever has been before. There is more media awareness of medical research and discoveries than we've had in years past. What do you think that means for the next few years in life sciences here in Australia? What do you think it means for investors looking at opportunities to allocate capital into that part of the market over the years ahead of us?
Well, yes, I really hope that it, that the interest in the medical research and medical innovation continues. So Australia has a long, very strong history of medical innovation. We Australians have created a number of life-saving devices and other devices that have, and have discoveries that have changed patient care globally. And so for us in the medical community, it's really important that we start to be able to share more of these stories with the general community so that we can have a greater understanding of what Australia has done and therefore how we can support the stories that are, or the companies that are on their journey now, so that we can continue to successfully translate our incredible research in Australia into drugs and devices that impact patient care globally. I think also what I love about getting to work in this field is the excitement about the impact that we can have. I mean, I could never have imagined as a doctor getting to work in a field where we could look at a clinical problem, set our mind to finding a solution to it, and then get the cleverest minds that we can find around it to actually make that happen. It's awesome to get to be able to go and share those stories, and it gives people a lot of hope. And I've had the opportunity to speak at my daughter's schools in the last few years, and even the primary school students get really excited about when they hear about some of the projects that we have on. And in particular, there are a whole bunch of kids at the local school that are cheering on Vaxxus, which is Brandon's investment in the vaccine nanopatch. They certainly all can't wait. I keep getting asked, it's my daughter's favourite investment, and I keep getting asked by her mum, what stage are they at? Where, when am I going to be able, is it going to be in time for the next time I have to get an injection? So they really invested in the story, which I think is so cool. And the fact that, then we're getting to educate the whole next generation, and they were already sort of starting to think about, I don't like such and such, so I'm going to invent something that will cure that. So I think what we do and getting to spread the word about that more, it gives people hope. It makes people realize that even the most impossible things can, with the right team, can be solved. So I just think it's a really awesome thing to be able to share more broadly with the community.
It is absolutely quite right, and I agree entirely. And I think it's really exciting to hear those sorts of energy levels coming through kids, Kath, today, and their can-do attitude towards conquering the world. I think bodes really well for the future of science here in this country and the future of our capacity to be a problem solver in the global arena. Kath, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing a little bit about the journey that you've been on through the medical practitioner, the clinician arena, and then into the investment world, and now in this role with OncoRes Medical as the CEO and Managing Director. It's been really interesting to hear your thoughts and insights, and it's been a real pleasure for us to be able to have this chat. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for everything that you're doing to support the private capital industry here in Australia and to support the future of Australia's medtech and medical innovation capability. Congratulations and well done to the team.
Thank you so much, Yasser. It's been fantastic to talk to you and get to share our story and hopefully create hope.
Thanks so much.